Welcome back to the shop. Today we are in for round 4. Yes, 4. We've gotten up to 4 in our series of flush cutter face-off. So in corner number 1 in a mangled box we have Knipex. I believe it's called KUH-ni-PEX. Yeah, I don't know. And in corner number 2 we have these. Now these should be from Weller. I believe this is a Weller company. And what we have is Germany's finest versus good old USA. This should be an interesting showdown here. Let's get into it here and get this out of its package already. Looking pretty good. Give me a second and I'll get this open. Okay, so we got into them here, and we have, immediately we can see there's a little bit of variation in how the heads are made. The Knipex looks very similar right off the bat to what we saw on the Klein in video 2. If you missed that, round 2 is up in the corner here. And that's, Klein did pretty well, so I'll be curious to see how that does. And then we take a look here. Okay, similar traits here on the Weller. I guess that's Xcelite, maybe? I don't know exactly how you say that, but I happen to know it's a Weller company, so we'll go with Weller. They have something kind of similar going on here on their jaws, but what does the microscope say? Okay, diving right in. Let's take a look at the Weller first. So immediately we'll take a look at the tips here. Now if you remember on the Crescent, when we looked at that, we saw the tips were not overly well made. They had kind of stuff hanging off to the sides. Here we can see some nice crisp tips. Very well defined. Looks like the tool's pretty well lubricated. There we have our Made in USA stamp getting into our handles. The handles do feel pretty nice on them. All these are pretty much about the same as far as the handles go, in my opinion. Let's take a look at the other side, the flush side, and we see some pretty nice grinding here. There we go. Get that. There's still some oil on there. Try and rub that off. There we go. That's a good look at it. It's ground pretty nicely. Very definite tips. Looks like this might be an anvil cutter. If you take a look at how that closes, if you look at the tip, you'll see right there's where they intersect, and then it goes a little further still. So this might be a different style than what we've seen before, or that could be how the anvil cutters are. We go looking at the rivet here, and here's our spring. Nothing special there, just a basic mechanism. They work very easy. Look very well ground, pretty flush. Let's take a look at that. You don't see one piece over the other. Everything's pretty consistent. Let's take a look at our jaws here. Get that down in there. We got one face. This is always hard to do. I think we have just 2 grind surfaces on that particular cutter. Yes, it looks that way. Now let's look at the other one. One grind face there. Let's look down here. That looks like that's only one grind face as well. So these might just overlap a little bit. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. I guess they overlap. Let's see what that looks like from the top. You can see that dirt mark if I hold that in focus. You can see that dirt mark. See how on the right hand side it's a little bit shinier? Watch how that goes all the way up to it. So that's got to be a type of anvil cutter. That's what I believe looking at that. Let's take a look at Germany's finest, Knipex. Look here at the top, the cutting surface. Right away we see a different type of metal. Get that metal the shavings off of there. Somebody cut cast iron on here and it's magnetized. Right away we see a different type of metal. You can see the structure of the metal on this is quite a bit different. Here's our rivet. You can see, whereas most of these others are just your standard punch through rivet, this is a little bit different, right? A little bit more akin to what the larger pliers have in them. Here you have a ball detent to stop. Whoop, let's get that in frame. There's your stop for it opening. Here's your stamping. The stamping is nice and crisp on that. Look at how crisp that is. And the handles, well, they're not too bad either. And there's our part number. I think the plastic's a little harder on the Knipex, but I don't think the Weller's all that bad myself. I think it's a decent plier. Let's look at the business side of this, and right away, look at that grind. Quite a bit more mirrory and nice than what we saw here on the Weller. Though the Weller is not bad compared to some of the others that we saw. The Weller is still pretty decent, but look at that. That is very nice. The tips come together. Let's just walk down this. Here's our rivet. Here's our spring. Now they've done a different style of spring. You can see it's in this handle and in the other handle, and the spring just works tension on the two. Different style, obviously very effective, but let's see if we can get, I can't open these too far because of that piece there, so getting the profile of the cutter might be interesting here, but we'll do what we can. So there's one definite grind. Same with the other side, we have one definite grind. Let's see if we can see. Boy, getting light on these is tough. Looks like they're just two grind on that side, and it looks like two grind on that side. Some of the other ones we saw three definite grinds. Let's see here, we got, yeah, the tip very clearly glows. So let's throw our backlight on and compare these two again. Okay, we've got our backlight. Let's take a look at the Weller. Going for a top view here. You can see those grinds coming down in there. And then let's take a look at what happens when we close it. All the light goes away. I am not squeezing very hard. So we have a good close. The tip is closed. Everything's closed. Let me do that and change my angle. I'm turning this around. And you can't see any light through that. Let's look at it from the back. Close that up. All the light goes away. A little bit maybe through there. Not much. I am not squeezing these very hard. Just enough to hold them closed. Now you can see I have a gap there. Closed it. You see how the tip just touches. We lose the light there first, but we lose the rest. If I can hold these just right, you can kind of see they overlap a little. So I'm wondering if we'll see that jagged pattern when we do our cut. Alright, let's take a look here at the Knipex starting on the top. Other than the dirt in it, it looks very nice. Very nice. Try and close it here. Let me get the magnetized stuff out of it there. There we go, that's a little better. Let's give her a close. Now this, I'm using about the same force as I did before with the Weller. We do see light, and if I squeeze harder, we actually still see some light. So I'll be curious to see if that's going to actually matter. There we go. Looking at the back side here. Let's give that a close. Now here, we get just that whiff of light through. That's with light pressure, but looking straight through here in the back, you don't get much light at all. Go that way, we don't get anything. This way we get a little, and if I squeeze hard, it looks like we're creating a ridge. Maybe not, but we might be creating a little bit of ridge when we do that. Yeah, it looks like we do. But we do block out most of the light. So let's get set up in the vise and see which one. There we go, we closed off the light, squeezing it that way. But that does take more force, and you can clearly see the tip is closing first. So let's get set up in the vise and see which one of these takes more force to close. Okay, we're set up in the vise here. We got everything zeroed out. We're going to do the same thing we always do. We're going to take our tie wrap and we're going to hold it just at the back edge of that cutting surface. And we're going to start squeezing with the vise. So I'm going to hold up on this tool so it doesn't bind or anything like that. And the vise jaw to start. And then once it's in good enough to hold itself, I'm going to let go, which might be soon here. Alright, so what do we got on force? 1.0, 1.5, 1.2, we got 2 there. And it looks like we might be starting to yield 2.5. Yep. Not getting a whole lot of force. We're probably about through. You can see the numbers going down. Yep, there we go. We went through. Let's see what we got here. We do not have... Well, you got a decent amount of force still on that. We didn't go through violently like we saw with the one, so let's get these out of the way, and I'll get reset with the Knipex in. I'd like to make note here that this sits better in this jaw because the way I ground these vise jaws, that seemed like it was pretty snug there. It's just because this is a bigger handle, and that makes it sit a little bit nicer in there. So I think that's what's going on there. So there we go, we got that out. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. We got the Knipex rigged up here. I'm just going to hold this side here. Same thing. We have the tie wrap into the cutter jaw. And I'm just going to hold this until it feels like the tool's going to hold itself, which it may not with the contours we have here. So we're up to 1.5, 2.0. Doesn't feel like either of these are going to have a lot of force. 2.5, about where we topped off with the Weller. There we go, we're through. So that was about the same, 2.6-ish, 2.7. You can see we don't have the tool jammed real hard. Let's get this stuff down and go back to the microscope and take a look at how our cutoffs look. Okay, we are back. So let's take a look at the Weller first off the bat here. So we have, let's get that in focus. That's pretty clean cut. We don't see it mushroomed out like we've seen on some of the others. Let's take a look at the other side here. But we can see how that's not a crisp line. You see how that tapers off here at the tip. So that was kind of ripping through, and you can see a little bit of a point happening there. So let's just take a look at, so yep, we got a good point going. That's definitely not super sharp, but it's definitely cutting through. It looks like you can see that ridge where both cutters kind of intersected. See how that goes to a point, and that's when it finally cut through. Let's take a look at the cut-off piece, which would be, remember, we're doing these backwards. This is what your tie wrap would look like after it's cut. Nice and clean. You look at that. Let's look at the other side. Still very clean. Not a whole lot wrong with that. Let's look at the end profile. There you can see that saw cut a little bit. I want to almost call it like a little bit of a notch. Looks like a saw blade. So you can kind of see how that went through. Went through on this angle a little bit, and then the other one you can clearly see coming through on that angle. So we almost have like a V-notch there, right? There's a little bit of a better look at that. But it looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. So that's what your tie wrap would actually look like, just because the way we hold that. Let's take a look at the Knipex, see how that did. So this is your cutoff side. Technically, this is what we have as our tie wrap, just because we hold everything backwards. But there's something to be told for how clean the cuts are. So we have a little bit of that ramping here. You can see how it's disformed a little bit there. Not bad though. Not the worst we've seen. Same thing here a little bit of a rounded tip. A little hard to see the way that is. Let's take our end profile. Definitely cut to a point. Definitely cut to a point. Took about the same force to do both of these, and honestly we're seeing about the same amount of disfigurement to the tie wrap, I guess we would say. So here we go, Weller on this side, and we got Knipex on the other. They're very similar, and very much similar. Maybe a little bit more here, but not much. So let's look at our cutoff piece, which would actually be what our tie wrap looks like, because we're backwards on how we're doing these. It's pretty crisp. Looking at the edges, they're not pushed out. Pretty crisp line on the top there. Let's look at the back. Little bit of an angle there, right on the edge. You see that? A little bit of a dive down. That looks like it might have failed a little, but you can see where the two jaws went through. Let's see if we can get an end profile here. Let's see if I can get that into focus. That's not too bad. You can see that's been cut through most of the way. That's been cut. Let's take a look at the Weller. About the same thing. You can see that's a little bit of discoloring there where it was ripping through, but you can see the cut marks. So that's not too bad. Going back to the Knipex, looking at our end profile, that's pretty good. That's a good cut. So that's very interesting. So let's go to our last test. We'll get the old scale out here and see what they weigh in at. Alright, we'll get our scale fired up here. Alright, we are on ounces. I'm going to change our units to grams to start. Alright, our Weller USA made comes in at 66.3 grams. Now this might be heavier because more rubber. Let's go down to our ounces. 2.34 ounces. Let's get back to our unit. What does it come in here? A little bit lighter, 57.2 and 2 point, yeah, it's basically 2 ounces. So Knipex is lighter, which is kind of what I expected when you see these handles. So I didn't talk a whole lot about the handles. I think both sets of handles are nice. I think I skipped the handles in one of the other videos. A lot of these handles now, here's the previous round, they're basically the same. I mean, they're decent plastic, rubberized handles. They feel like they're on the tools relatively decent. Same here with these. I don't think you would have a problem with any of them sliding off. So we saw something interesting where the metal work seems to be much nicer on the Knipex. The Wellers here, I think the Wellers are a bit cheaper than the Knipex. The Knipex are quite a bit more. They're maybe about twice as much as these. So honestly, for the money, the Wellers are probably better. Not that the Knipex is a bad pair of flush cutters. I think I'd be being a little biased. I'd say, because I like to buy USA made stuff when I can, I think the Weller's probably the best for the price here. But the craftsmanship to build the Knipex is definitely better. It's much smoother operating when you squeeze it. Some of that's in part of this style spring that it has. This particular style spring, when you move it, it just feels grindy. It's not a big deal. It's just how they feel. It's just how it works. Either of these are a good choice. I had not seen these in the trades really when I was looking around to do, face-offs here. I came across these and I thought, let's give them a go. So I thought this was a pretty good face-off. We saw our cut profiles are actually kind of similar between the two. I was not expecting that. If I would have been guessing before, I was going to guess this was going to be cleaner. So, surprise there on the Weller. I think that's kind of neat. Yeah. I think I'm going to give this to the Weller, my own personal opinion, just because it costs less. If these were the exact same price, I would give it to the Knipex, just because you're getting more craftsmanship for your money. The forces to cut were almost identical. The cut quality almost identical. So I think for value, I'd give it to the Xcelite or Weller, and for craftsmanship and everything, I'd give it, if money were no object and you wanted a nicely fine tool, I would probably go with the Knipex. Knipex being a little lighter. If you want to have the lightest tool bag possible, probably want to go with a pair of these. And that's really all I see here. So, super interesting video. Not exactly what I would have predicted, so I like that. Always new things to learn. Stick with it here. We're going to have a few more rounds on this. We just got the vise set up. We got this microscope. So we're playing around with all this stuff. But we'll have future rounds. And if you didn't see the previous rounds, check them out. This is kind of interesting. It's a fun thing to throw together and just play around here in the shop. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.